A Kentucky man who won part of the $280 million lottery jackpot after being laid off from his job has died. The independent reports say 58-year-old David Lee Edwards died Saturday at a hospice care center in Ashland.
What if you had a $7 chance that suddenly turned into a life-changing $280 million lottery ticket? It sounds like an amazing dream, right? Well, for David Lee, this massive amount of money turned into a nightmare. You see, David had a tough time with the law before winning, and even spent some time in jail. Winning the lottery seemed like his big chance to turn things around with all that cash, but things didn't go as planned. How can what seems like the solution to all your problems suddenly become your ultimate doom? Buying those lottery tickets at a local store turned his life around in an instant, from constant struggles to sudden wealth. It was a golden opportunity for him to start fresh. During a press conference, he shared about his past and his hopes to build a better life with his fiancée and daughter. He talked about being a responsible family man. His younger years were filled with sadness, and family issues hit him hard. To cope, he turned to illegal substances and alcohol as a teen, which led him down a path filled with crime. By the time he was 18, David's problems had grown, including a botched robbery and a shootout with the police. He tried to straighten up by going to a reformatory school and later making efforts to change, but his old habits of addiction and crime kept pulling him back, costing him many years of his life. Things seemed to look up when he met his future wife, Shauna, and got his parents' house. But he was still struggling with money until he decided to buy 2 Powerball tickets on a whim. Given his tough situation, winning the lottery seemed like a miracle. At that press conference where he got a big check, he talked about his past mistakes and his determination to change. He called the win a poor man's dream come true, mixing joy with disbelief. He planned to use his new wealth wisely to support his fiancée and daughter.
I'm gonna buy Shauna a very nice engagement ring.
Aiming to leave his rough past behind and start over as a reliable family man and provider. The lottery win was more than just money. It was a fresh start and a chance to live without financial worries, which was completely new to him. He chose to take all his winnings at once and met with a financial advisor who helped him set up a plan to make $85,000 a month from investments. The plan was supposed to secure a comfortable future for him and his loved ones. David's life changed big time when he hit it rich. He upgraded from a plain old house to a fancy $1.6 million mansion in Florida, decked out with tennis courts and a golf course. It was a massive upgrade. Then he started gathering some super expensive cars. He picked up a Lamborghini Diablo for $200,000 and a Dodge Viper for $90,000. The Lamborghini packs a punch with its V12 engine and Italian flair, while the Dodge Viper brings that tough American muscle but also has some Lamborghini tech in its V10 engine, thanks to a cool collaboration during its design. This shift in David's life is a perfect example of those classic jackpot stories, where someone suddenly lives in luxury, showing off new fancy homes and cars that were once a dream. This is a classic case of sudden wealth syndrome, the stress and mixed feelings that come with getting rich quickly. Lottery winners like David can feel happy, anxious, and confused all at once. Coming from a life of financial struggles, dealing with sudden wealth is a lot to handle. They want to make smart money decisions, but don't always know how, and they face a lot of requests for money. Sadly, many lottery winners aren't prepared for these challenges. They might spend too much, give away a lot of money, or make bad investments, sometimes ending up worse off than before. Winning the lottery might seem great, but it can become a huge burden without proper planning. Edwards went on a huge shopping spree after he won the lottery. He bought a $1.9 million Learjet and hired a personal pilot to fly him between his homes in California and Florida. His spending didn't stop there. He also got a $600,000 house in Palm Springs, an $80,000 gold watch, a $160,000 ring, and a $30,000 plasma TV. He splurged on fancy designer clothes and rare collectibles too, adding to his over-the-top lifestyle. When Edwards won the lottery, it was a chance for him to reconnect with his daughter, Tiffany. She'd grown distant because of his past problems and time in jail. Winning the lottery seemed like his chance to be a better dad. His first call was to Tiffany, and it was full of excitement and promises of a better life. For Tiffany, this was a big change from not having her dad around to suddenly having him everywhere. As Edwards tried to get closer to Tiffany, things with his new wife Shauna started to fall apart. Their marriage, which had seemed like a new start for him, couldn't handle the stress of their sudden wealth. The money made their problems worse, feeding addictions and leading to a chaotic home life. Tiffany found herself in a world of luxury, seeing the good and bad of her dad's new life. Fancy gifts and a rich lifestyle couldn't cover up the real problems. Her dad's worsening addiction, his troubled marriage, and bad money decisions that were eating away at their wealth. Her life became a mix of comfort and chaos, watching the family's short period of financial stability fall apart. As Edward's money ran out because of careless spending and bad investments, the hope for a stable family life disappeared. Tiffany was stuck in the middle of it all, watching her dad quickly lose his wealth and health. The fancy life in their mansion was short-lived, and the tough realities of her dad's long-term issues came back, now worse because of his brief moment of extreme wealth. This story highlights how sudden wealth can complicate family relationships and make existing problems like addiction even worse. According to the National Endowment for Financial Education, about 70% of people who suddenly get a lot of money, like from a lottery, lose it within a few years. Edwards was part of this unfortunate group. His addiction got worse with the lottery money. Instead of helping him build a better future, it let him dive deeper into his old habits. Now, with more money, it was even easier for him to get illegal substances, leading to more damage. Edwards and his wife Shauna got deeper into their addictions, spending about $200,000 a month on illegal substances. This drained his money and hurt his health and family life. The illegal substance use destroyed the family structure. Edwards was often not around for Tiffany, leaving her with nannies. His addiction also ruined his marriage, making their home life full of fights, distrust, and even violence. Winning the lottery seemed like a miracle for David at first, but this sudden wealth set the stage for a huge downfall. What started as a big win turned into a major financial and personal disaster, taking away not just his money, but also tearing apart his personal life. Edwards had no clue how to manage his big money, so he made some bad choices with investments. He threw cash at things like racehorses and random businesses that all ended up failing because he didn't plan well. These bad decisions drained his money and got him into legal trouble with people wanting to get paid. At the same time, his personal life was a mess. He and his wife, Shauna Maddox, were both struggling with addiction, which made their money problems even worse. Edwards spent a lot of money trying to get Shauna help at a fancy rehab, but it didn't work. Their relationship kept getting worse, full of fights and stress, turning their once happy home into a place of constant arguing. By 2006, David Lee Edwards' whirlwind financial saga had reached a climax of near-biblical proportions of misfortune and mismanagement, turning his lottery windfall into a spectacular financial catastrophe. After winning a staggering $27 million in the Powerball lottery back in 2001, Edwards embarked on a spending spree that was as extravagant as it was calamitous. Let's start with the big-ticket debts. David slapped down a cool $500,000 on a mortgage for a plush residence in Palm Beach Gardens, where the high life led to high bills. But it wasn't just the mortgage gnawing at his wallet. The Ballin Isles Community Association was on his case too, slapping a lien on his luxurious digs over a seemingly measly $2,599.81 in unpaid maintenance fees. Yet in the grand opera of his financial demise, even the small numbers echoed like a chorus of doom. The plot thickens with the saga of his credit card debt. Bank of America emerged as a major antagonist, wielding a lawsuit to claw back a whopping $170,787.74. Imagine, nearly 200 grand, swiped mostly on what? Lavish whims and fleeting luxuries, each swipe a nail in his fiscal coffin. And oh, the business ventures. Our tragic hero poured a mind-boggling $4.5 million into two ventures as ill-fated as a Shakespearean romance. A fiber optics installation business and a limousine service, both drowned in the quicksands of his financial mismanagement, never to see the light of profit. Through it all, Edward's life was a roller coaster that dipped and twisted through extremes of opulence and destitution. From flashy cars and a private jet to a warehouse dwelling overshadowed by needles and despair, his story is a cautionary tale writ large, a testament to the perils of fortune untempered by wisdom. By the time 2006 rolled around, the once lottery millionaire was grappling with a monstrous financial hydra, mortgages, massive credit card debts, and business blunders that together wove a tapestry of fiscal ruin. Each decision, each investment became a thread in a cloak of debt that Edwards donned with the heavy inevitability of Greek tragedy. His story, embroidered with the somber threads of financial chaos, serves as a stark reminder of the volatility of fortune, how quickly it can be won, and how swiftly and utterly it can be lost. Edward's story is a harsh lesson about what can go wrong when you suddenly get rich and don't handle it well. It's not just about losing money. His whole family fell apart. His daughter and stepson had to be taken away for their own safety, showing how deep the problems went. In the end, Edward's life turned really tough. His marriage fell apart after a scary fight with Shauna, and he ended up living in bad conditions, a sad end to what started as a dream come true. David Lee Edwards' life took a sharp turn, from luxury to poverty. He moved back to Kentucky and lived a far simpler life in a trailer park, surviving on disability payments and food stamps. This was a huge change from his days in million-dollar mansions with fast cars. The warehouse he once filled with luxury cars became his shabby home, cluttered with rotten food and evidence of his ongoing addiction, like crack pipes and used syringes. His health took a nosedive as he and Shauna caught hepatitis, likely from using dirty needles. During these tough years, Edwards became isolated and filled with regret. His daughter Tiffany and stepson were taken into foster care because of their unsafe home. Although he tried to get clean, his past decisions and addiction were too much to escape. He lost all his wealth and properties. Everything was sold, stolen or taken by banks, and legal problems kept piling up. The twilight years of David Lee Edwards, once a $27 million Powerball jackpot winner, unfolded like a melancholic ballad of lost glory and forgotten dreams. From the pinnacle of wealth, Edwards' descent was precipitous, marked not by the golden notes of prosperity, but by the stark chords of hardship and despair. By 2013, 12 years post-jackpot, his saga concluded not in the luxury of a mansion, but in the somber confines of a Kentucky hospice, where he spent his final days battling the ravages of liver disease and the ghosts of past excesses. His health, long compromised by a fierce battle with addiction, substances that once served as misguided escapades from reality, was beyond redemption. Despite his late life resolve to quit illegal substances, the damage was irrevocable, his body a ledger of past abuses that no amount of willpower could heal. Edward's life, once bright with the promise of endless possibility, dimmed as his health faded, leaving him a shadow of the vibrant lottery winner he once was. Financially, the narrative was equally grim. The riches that once seemed inexhaustible had dwindled to nothing, siphoned away by a combination of lavish spending, unwise investments, and the insidious cost of addiction. The grandeur of his earlier days of luxury cars, a private jet, and an assortment of medieval armor, had dissolved into the starkness of financial ruin. His bank accounts, once swollen with lottery winnings, were now barren landscapes, echoing the hollow end of a fortune misspent. In his final environment, stripped of wealth and health, Edwards was a solitary figure. The throngs of friends and hangers-on that had once surrounded him had dispersed, a retinue dissolved by the vanishing act of his wealth. In the hospice, there were no visitors from his past life, no remnants of his former glory, only the quiet, persistent reminder of what had been lost. His daughter, Tiffany, was left to grapple with the legacy of a father whose life story was a tapestry woven with threads of caution and tragedy. The end came quietly.
Edwards was convicted of robbery in 1981 and served out his sentence in 1997. Several years after winning the lottery, he was evicted from his $1 million home in Florida after failing to pay back dues to the Homeowners Association.
A world away from the fanfare that had marked his lottery win, there was no money left for a grand farewell, no opulent funeral or sprawling estate to pass on. Edwards was cremated, his remains placed into an urn, not the vaulted tombs of historical figures he might have once fancied himself akin to. It was a humble conclusion to a life that had burned too brightly, too swiftly, extinguished by the very fortune that should have secured his legacy. Reflecting on Edwards' life is like watching the slow, inevitable fade of a star that had once burned with a fierce, all-consuming light. His story serves as a stark reminder of the ephemeral nature of fortune, a tale that underscores the profound responsibilities that come with great wealth. It's a narrative woven with caution, urging a thoughtful stewardship of resources, the cultivation of healthy habits, and the nurturing of relationships that will endure beyond the fleeting dazzle of material wealth. In the echoes of Edwards' life are lessons about the dangers of excess.
David Lee Edwards' story is a perfect example of how fortune can turn into a curse when you're not ready for it. He won millions, and within just a few years, lost everything. But the most shocking part isn't just the downfall, that's how luck sometimes comes with a hidden price. And speaking of hidden prices, there's another story that takes the lottery theme in a completely different direction. This time, it's not about someone losing their wealth through bad choices. It's about someone who never should have had that wealth in the first place. Jun-Chul Shin didn't become rich by chance. He planned it all. A lottery fraud that exposed a vulnerable system and put millions at stake. What you're about to hear isn't just a scam. It's a blueprint for how someone hacked a game that's supposed to be random.
Kenneth Chung's Variety Plus store in Ontario was having a quiet day on the 22nd of December, 2003. Behind the counter was Kenneth's dad, Jun-Chul, who was sometimes employed by Kenneth to help out at the store. On that day, it was also Jun-Chul who had the job of checking lottery tickets for customers. On that sleepy day, Daniel Campbell walked into the store. He was a regular and had been to the store just 3 days earlier to buy a stack of 4 Lotto Super 7 tickets. He often bought lottery tickets with a group of friends from work. The 6 of them would all chip in some cash. Then one of the friends would go out and buy the tickets. If any of the tickets won, they'd agreed to split the winnings. It was Daniel's turn to buy the tickets now, while the group waited patiently to hear if they'd won any money just days before Christmas. Daniel politely handed over all of the tickets to Jun-Chul, while Kenneth stood nearby. One by one, Jun-Chul put each ticket into the machine to check for Daniel's lottery winnings. And amazingly, Daniel had won. Okay, so he hadn't won any cash, but he had won 5 free plays. That's a pretty good deal. And Daniel excitedly picked his 5 free tickets on behalf of all his friends. He handed these new free play tickets over to Jun-Chul too. And again, one by one, he checked all 5 tickets. He told Daniel that, unfortunately, it wasn't his lucky day. Not even one of the tickets had won anything. He handed a stack of tickets back to Daniel, who left the shop and went about his day without really thinking about that encounter again. After all, it's not unusual to not win the lottery, is it? Only if Daniel had looked closer, he would have realized that Jun-Chul had only handed back 4 out of his 5 free play tickets. The 5th ticket was still in Jun-Chul's hand. Why had he not given it back to Daniel? Because the machine had told him the ticket was a jackpot winner. And instead of doing the right thing and allowing Daniel and his friends to claim the greatest Christmas gift they'd ever get, Jun-Chul decided he'd keep it for himself. We know, that's a pretty terrible thing to do. So how much had Daniel and his friends won? We'll get to that in a moment. Jun-Chul now had a problem. He was determined to get his hands on this jackpot, but how does he claim the prize without looking suspicious? It looked like it was time to get the whole family involved in this huge crime. Jun Chol's son, Kenneth, could never claim the lottery prize because he owns the store where the ticket was purchased and checked. It would be way too suspicious for him to go down to the lottery office with the winning ticket. And it would be too suspicious for Jun Chol to do it himself because he was employed at the store. Luckily, Jun Chol also had a daughter named Kathleen, and she had nothing to do with her brother's store. It was pretty obvious she should be the one to collect the winnings, and she was more than happy to get involved in the crime in exchange for some of the money. But the family needed to make sure they didn't raise any suspicions. So they waited a few months before sending Kathleen to collect the winnings. Finally, in February the next year, she made her way down to the offices of the Ontario Lottery and Gambling Corporation to collect the stolen prize. They always have a few questions before they hand over a jackpot, and even though she had months to rehearse, Kathleen wasn't answering their questions so effectively. They soon noticed that someone who shares her family name owns a variety store near her home, but she denied having any relation to Kenneth. Then, she eventually backtracked and admitted her brother did own a store, but she said she definitely didn't buy this winning lottery ticket at his store. Instead, she claimed she bought it in Street Catherine's on a whim. Then, when they asked her exactly which store, she said she couldn't remember. In fact, she claimed she couldn't even remember buying it, but still insisted she was the rightful owner of the ticket. I've never heard a more suspicious story in my entire life, and maybe someone at the lottery thought that didn't add up because there was a delay for a few months where the money wasn't handed over. But in the end, against all odds, the lottery shockingly decided to pay out the money to Kathleen. That's not good news for anyone who has their ticket stolen in Canada, but we still don't know how much they handed over. How big was the prize they'd stolen from Daniel and his friends? A whopping $12.5 million. The Chum family were obviously delighted that they got away with their crime, but they were still trying to avoid suspicion. So they got other members of their family involved who were much further away from the local lottery office in Canada. They had an aunt in South Korea, and they figured the millions would be a lot safer if they were hidden in an offshore bank account over there. So they sent most of the money to her bank account in Seoul. As for the rest of it, well, they decided it was time to start spending. Weirdly, even though they were worried enough about looking suspicious that they went to the effort of putting the money in a Korean bank account, they didn't seem worried about how suspicious it would look to start spending crazy amounts of cash. The family soon owned 2 mansions and several luxury cars. For the next 3 years, they lived a life of luxury, becoming less and less ashamed of flaunting their stolen money. The longer they got away with it, the more they lived it up. They had no idea that things were changing behind the scenes. Remember how we said it was pretty shocking that the lottery had paid out the money to them, even though Kathleen was obviously lying about how she got the ticket? Well, it turns out that kind of thing was a pretty big problem in Ontario at the time. There had been so many suspicious lottery wins like this one that the government started to take notice. And it was the government who eventually issued a report in 2007, which accused the Ontario Lottery and Gambling Corporation of ignoring fraudulent claims on lottery tickets. They didn't know if the corporation was doing this deliberately or if the people in charge were just too lazy to follow up on suspicious claims for lottery jackpots. But either way, the government was sick of it. Their report was enough to trigger a massive investigation into lottery claims from the years 1999 to 2006. And that included Kathleen's claim to the jackpot. Now, with all the pressure on them to check up on these claims, the corporation wasn't able to ignore all the obvious signs that Kathleen's ticket was stolen. With all the other cases they needed to investigate, it took them a bit of time to look into Kathleen's case. But in 2010, the Chum family's world came crashing down around them. Jun Chol, Kenneth, and Kathleen were all arrested and charged with fraud for stealing Daniel's jackpot-winning lottery ticket. It took a few years to secure a conviction for the criminal family. Initially, Kenneth, as the owner of the store, received a 10-month prison sentence, but he was later acquitted of all the charges against him. In the end, the judge just couldn't prove beyond a doubt that Kenneth had been in his store that day, or that he had any idea his father had stolen the ticket from one of his customers. We'll leave it up to you to decide if he was involved or not. But Jun Chol and Kathleen weren't so lucky. Kathleen was sentenced to 4 years in prison, and Jun Chol got 7 years. Although you'll be disappointed to hear that they got out on bail pretty soon after. So was there any real justice for Daniel and his friends? We have an answer. But before we tell you, you should know that this isn't a one-off. It actually happens a lot. There are many ways that store clerks steal winning lottery tickets. Some have been caught making strategic scratches in tickets so they can see if they're winners, but still put the losing ones back in the pack without raising too much suspicion. One even scratched off only enough to reveal the serial number so the ticket could be scanned by the machine that checks for winning tickets. Normally, that serial number is revealed only when you correctly scratch off a ticket. One unique idea came from a clerk named Shekinah Louise James, who spotted an incredible opportunity with a store she worked at received a shipment of lottery tickets. She guessed there were so many that nobody would notice if she just took a whole box containing 150 tickets for herself. Don't get any ideas though. It's not as easy to steal a shipment of tickets as it sounds. They need to be activated before they work. And to do that, someone needs to actually buy them. Also, the box was worth $300, so the store owner had already reported them missing to the police. So when Shekinah tried to scan them to check for winners, they were waiting for her. Although she still had time to complain to the lottery office about the ticket scanner not wanting to check her ticket. Also, she probably shouldn't have used her actual signature when she took the delivery. But not all clerks who steal tickets are as easy to catch as she was. Over in Miami, Sylvia C. Kalia had been stealing tickets for years. She owned La Rampa supermarket, and every time one of her customers came in wanting to check their lottery tickets, she'd take the winning ones for herself, just like Junchol did. Only, Sylvia did a lot. She'd hand the tickets to her husband to cash them in, hoping that it would help her avoid suspicion as the owner of the store. And it actually worked. Over the years, her husband claimed a whopping 11 winning lottery tickets. None of them were winners of $12 million like the Chun family's stolen ticket, but they had stolen a lot of cash from real lottery winners who trusted them with their tickets. In the end, Sylvia and her husband had gathered $36,000 from their stolen tickets, and not one person had noticed. So how do we know about it? Well, as you could tell, clerks stealing lottery tickets is a pretty big problem in the US. So, the lottery corporations have put a pretty interesting thing in place to help them catch thieving clerks and make sure that winning lottery tickets stay in the hands of their rightful owners. This is gonna sound like a story from a TV show, but we promise it's really happening in real life. Up and down the country, undercover lottery agents are setting traps for lottery clerks. How does it work? Well, a lottery agent posing as an ordinary customer visits a store and asks the clerk to check their ticket to see if it's a winner. Only they already know it's a winner. The lottery has deliberately issued them with a winning ticket to catch a thief. Of course, if the clerk tells the agent that the ticket has won, then there's obviously no crime happening. But if the clerk tells the agent it hasn't won anything, then they get suspicious. But mistakes happen. If the clerk gives the ticket back, then it's probably not a crime. But if the clerk takes the ticket, then they're clearly trying to keep the money for themselves. That's not enough for a conviction, though. The lottery agent will leave the store and notify the lottery that the ticket has been taken. The lottery knows the number on the ticket, and they set up an alert so they're notified when someone tries to claim the cash from the ticket with the same unique number. They notify the police and will investigate the clerk that took the ticket and the person that tried to claim the winnings from the ticket if the clerk didn't do it themselves. That's how Sylvia was caught. She had no idea that the customer she was talking to one day was an undercover agent, or that she'd been deliberately handed a winning ticket, which of course she took for herself. Her husband was arrested as soon as he tried to claim the cash from the winning ticket. Oops. In every lottery crime we've mentioned so far, the clerk has told the ticket holder that their ticket didn't win anything. But don't be fooled. Sometimes they'll tell you that you're a winner. How can they steal your money then? Well, Andy Ascar tried this trick on a customer who brought in a ticket. He told the customer that his ticket had won $5,000. He even charged the winner $1,000 as a store fee, handing over $4,000. But the ticket was actually worth an incredible $5 million. Luckily, he was caught when officials got suspicious because he waited as long as he was allowed to cash in the ticket. That's not the only time that happened either. Another clerk named Edward Brown was caught after filling out a lottery claim form incorrectly. He told his customer he'd won $100 when the ticket was actually worth $1,000. So you can't trust a clerk who gives you money. Our advice to help you avoid becoming a victim of a lottery clerk like Daniel and his friends did is to make sure the clerk gives your ticket back when you get it checked. And watch closely. Some clerks will give back some of your tickets while holding on to a winner, like Junchol did to Daniel. And some will even switch your ticket for a different one, which happened to a war veteran in London. And also, it's much harder to steal a ticket if you've signed it. So always sign your ticket the minute you buy and watch carefully when you get the ticket checked. Obviously, not all clerks are trying to steal your money, but there's no way to tell if you're talking to a thief. Most of the people who were the rightful owners of tickets stolen by these clerks never got their winnings, including the London veteran who should have been given $8 million. But what about Daniel and his group of friends? Did they ever get their money back? Just because the Chung family were caught, that doesn't mean he got the money. Well, we have some good news. The Ontario Lottery and Gambling Corporation was obviously in a bit of trouble because of how many times this had happened in Ontario over the years. They needed to do something to prove that lottery winners do get the money they won. So, as part of trying to make it up to people who lost out to fraud, they put measures in place to make sure the rightful winners were paid. In this case, the Chung's assets in Canada were seized. That included the luxury cars and mansions they'd bought with Daniel's money. But even after they'd taken and resold all their assets, the lottery had only recovered $8 million of Daniel's winnings. For the rest of it, they decided to make Jun Chol and Kathleen pay. Literally, each of them were fined $4.6 million to make up the rest of the money that rightly belonged to Daniel. Some of you will have noticed that the money they gathered adds up to more than Daniel actually won. That's because the lottery decided he needed to be paid back all of his winnings plus interest from the years he didn't have access to it. So in the end, Daniel received $14.3 million. It's good to know that even though they didn't spend as much time in prison as they probably should have, they did have to face justice somehow. And, in a way, that punishment really does fit the crime. So what did Daniel do with the money? Well, he proved to everyone that there's never a good reason to be greedy. As he promised, he split the winnings equally with his 5 friends who he played the lottery with. Legally, Daniel would have been allowed to take the money for himself. He bought the winning ticket with his own money this time, as the friends always did. But he wasn't like the Chung family. He'd made an agreement with his friends, and he stuck to it. The entire group couldn't believe their luck, and they used their money to pay for important things, like education for their kids. Isn't it nice when a story has a happy ending?
Jun Chol's story revealed the darker side of the lottery, a game many believe is pure luck, turned into a calculated, high-stakes fraud. It was methodical, tech-driven, and worth millions, until it all collapsed. But not every lottery story is built on deception. Sometimes luck really does strike like lightning, changing a life in an instant. That's exactly what happened to Mavis Wanchik, an ordinary woman living a quiet life who went from working as a nurse to becoming a multimillionaire overnight. But what makes her story truly fascinating isn't just how much she won. It's what she chose to do with it. Her journey will make you question whether we're ever truly ready for everything we wish for.
I work currently at Mercy Medical Center, and I was there for 32 years, and I was a unit extender patient care type of thing. So we're still there, or are you? I've called them and told them I will not be coming back.
It was August 23rd, 2017, and Mavis was leaving work with her friend Rob. She bought 5 tickets 4 days earlier, but hadn't watched the draw live, as she never imagined she could win. As she put it, "It's never going to be me. It's just a pipe dream that I've always had." Rob checked the numbers though, and he noted something. "I bet you someone won with these numbers as birthdays." The exact method Mavis had used to pick hers. So she got out her tickets and checked them against the numbers Rob was reading out: 6, 7, 16, 23, and 26. Key dates from her family's birthdays, plus the Powerball number 4. The number she used at Keno every Friday night. Mavis was in disbelief and handed her ticket to her friend for confirmation. She hadn't just won a few $100. She matched all 6 numbers, the odds of which are just 1 in 292.2 million. She'd won the jackpot, a jaw-dropping $758 million, almost $1 billion. In shock, Mavis didn't know how to react. Fortunately, her friend Rob was a firefighter and could keep his cool in stressful situations. His first instruction was to sign her ticket straight away, which she did. Then she needed to go home. Rob was pretty sure she was good to drive, but just in case, he followed her back to her house. Once she'd been safely escorted, she called her son to share the good news, then rushed over to her sister's house to present the winning ticket. She'd been playing the lottery for more than 20 years, and it had finally paid off. Of course, at this stage, she had no idea how many people played her lucky numbers, and therefore, how many she'd be sharing the prize with. So just how much had she won? Claiming the money. To find out, she had to travel to the Massachusetts State Lottery headquarters and claim her prize. There, lottery officials confirmed her win, and more importantly, that she was the only jackpot winner of the draw. She didn't have to share, and the whole prize was hers, $758.7 million, the largest win on a single ticket in U.S. history at the time. The next step was to make the big decision: take the lump sum or opt for the annual payments and 5% interest. Financially, taking the cash in one go makes much more sense, as investing it will generally provide a much higher return. But yearly payments are a great option for those worried they might be unable to control themselves with their newfound wealth. Fortunately, Mavis was a level-headed woman. She'd grown up comfortable, not rich, not poor, and lived a modest lifestyle. While many would race to spend their millions on mansions, sports cars, and lavish holidays, Mavis simply wanted to pay off the loan on her existing vehicle and retire early. So, she took the cash payment of $758 million and, after taxes, received a whopping $336 million. This gave her a net worth higher than some countries like Micronesia and the Pacific Islands of Palau, not to mention most A-list celebs. Like many of us, her first move was to ring up her boss at the nursing department at Mercy Medical Center, where she'd worked for 32 years, and tell him she would not be coming back. "I had a pipe dream, and my dream has finally come true," she said. "I wanted to retire in 12 years, and it came early." While down-to-earth Mavis would have preferred to relish her early retirement, relax at home, and figure out what to do next, she was quickly swept up in a media storm. Nearly every advisor would tell lottery winners to remain anonymous, or at least delaying coming forward until the media storm had quieted down. But everyone was excited, including the state of Massachusetts, which stood to make $24 million off the win, and Mavis was talked into a press conference within just 24 hours. There, they presented her with an oversized check for her millions. It was a massive event, with news cameras from all over the country capturing the moment. Mavis, supported by her mother and two sisters, was met with a frenzy of questions about her numbers the moment she found out and what she planned to do with the money. The cameras were flashing, the reporters were shouting at her, but Mavis took it all in her stride. She was calm, cool, and collected, even though her life had just made a mind-boggling turn for the better. When she was asked how she planned on celebrating that evening, she joked, "I'm gonna go hide in my bed." For many, an early announcement is a red flag indicating an overexcited winner wanting to show off to the world and blow their money on champagne, designer clothes, and fast cars. But for Mavis, it was simply a very naive mistake. "I just wanted to do this. I wanted to just get it over and done with, and then everybody would just leave me alone." Of course, that didn't happen, and she was quickly left fearing for her life. The aftermath. Everyone, including Mavis, knows that a lottery win doesn't always equal a lifetime of wealth. Take William Bud Post, for example. He won $16.2 million in the Pennsylvania lottery in 1988, and within a few years, he was bankrupt and on food stamps. Or David Lee Edwards, who won $27 million in the Powerball lottery in 2001 and quickly squandered it all on lavish homes, fancy cars, and frivolous expenses. Within a few years, he was broke and living in a storage unit. Mavis knew these cautionary tales well and sought out professional advice. Happily, she wasn't the type to blow her fortune, but unfortunately, she couldn't control the media attention and the general public.
I want to have your baby.
I know your mama.
Suddenly thrown into the public eye, with her face plastered on newspapers and television screens across the country, reporters were calling her non-stop for interviews, and everyone wanted a piece of her. Everywhere she went, people were staring at her, asking her for autographs and selfies. She couldn't leave her house without being recognized, and even her friends and family members were calling her non-stop for money. Mavis felt like she was suffocating under the weight of her newfound wealth and fame. Even people that she used to deeply care about turned foul and violent after she won. They saw her as nothing but an ATM. Sadly, it didn't just stop with the people she knew. People from all over the country started hunting for her contact information. One even called Chicopee Police Public Information Officer Michael Wilk, telling him an obviously fake sob story and asking him to request money from Mavis on their behalf. He refused and hung up. But that was just the beginning. In the days after the press conference, strangers started showing up in her neighborhood, trying to track her down. They went door to door, asking people if they knew where Mavis lived, and her long-term home and sanctuary suddenly became a very dangerous place for her to be. The police were forced to increase patrols in her neighborhood and even stationed officers outside her house, hoping the increased visibility would deter those with bad intentions. Fortunately, it worked, and Mavis escaped any physical confrontations. Unfortunately, those looking to cash in on her win took their hunt online. Attempted scams. Scammers began crawling out of the woodwork to try to take advantage of her newfound fame and fortune. Phone calls, emails, and letters began pouring in, all claiming to be from people looking to share in her good fortune. Mavis was inundated with messages from strangers asking for money, promising to invest her winnings for her, and even threatening her and her family if she didn't comply with their demands. It was a dark side of her sudden fame that she could never have anticipated. The scammers were persistent, and they came in all shapes and sizes. Some claimed to be from charitable organizations, while others promised access to exclusive investment opportunities. It was overwhelming, and Mavis found herself constantly on guard, never knowing who to trust. Despite the stress and fear that came with being targeted, Mavis refused to let them win. She reached out to law enforcement officials who worked tirelessly to identify and prosecute those responsible. She found support from her family and close friends who helped her deal with the constant attention, and then hired a legal team and other advisors to keep her away from scams. She also made a conscious effort to give back to her community, donated a portion of her winnings to charity, and set up a scholarship fund for students pursuing careers in healthcare. Frustratingly, the scammers were smart, and when they realized that Mavis wasn't going to fall for their cons, they decided to turn things around. Identity theft. Online scams are a numbers game. The vast majority of people will never fall for a phishing or financial scam that arrives in their inbox, but a minority will. This means that all scammers have to do is target enough people, and they'll eventually receive a payout. This is why targeting Mavis didn't work. She was just one person who was expecting it, and was now surrounded by financial advisors and law enforcement. So instead, scammers started using her name in press conference videos to attempt to con others. Just days after her win became public knowledge, the emails started landing in people's inboxes. Some were short and to the point, like, "Congratulations, you've been granted a charitable donation of $40 million by Mrs. Mavis Wanchik to be transferred in the next few days. Please contact her for more information at maviswanchik23@gmail.com. Thanks." Others were more sophisticated, detailing her past and wish for a modest life, claiming, "I've decided to do God's work after having a long conversation with some ministers of God and prayer sessions. I want you and your family to be happy as we are happy today. We have voluntarily decided to donate the sum of $5 million for you and your family as part of our own charity project to help increase the fortune of 14 lucky people around the world." One even tried to cash in on the tragic death of Mavis's ex-husband by saying she had set up a donation program in his name, and the recipient of the email could enter a raffle for their chance of winning €4.2 million. Of course, to enter, the email recipient had to reply with their full name, email address, phone number, and information about their occupation. These phishing scams managed to harvest a wealth of private information that could later be used for fraud. And they didn't just stick to email. Hundreds of fake Facebook and Instagram accounts were set up in Mavis's name. Many came with a bio like, "Lottery winner of $758 million, giving back $5,000 to the first 100,000 followers. This is too much money for me, and I love helping people." This particular account ended up with 54.7 thousand followers. While following a fake Instagram isn't going to cause anyone to lose their savings, tragically, some were taken in by the scams. One victim was contacted by a Mavis account offering $15,000. All he had to do to claim the money was pay some fees, amounting to $3,786 in untraceable bit currency. Unfortunately, he fell for it and transferred the money. When the $15,000 didn't arrive, he paid another $300 to expedite the check. Then the scammers turned nasty and demanded access to his Facebook account and $500, or they'd turn the victim in to the FBI. The fake accounts became such a problem that the Chicopee police were forced to release a statement warning residents not to follow or respond to any messages supposedly from Mavis. Then Mavis herself went public with the story, warning others about the dangers of falling prey to the lottery scammers and encouraging people to report any suspicious activity. She made it clear that she would not be reaching out to anybody randomly and offering free money. Life after the lottery. It was a long and difficult journey, but in the end, Mavis learned how to exist in the public eye and found a balance between her newfound fame and her desire for privacy. She was forced to leave her home, but soon settled in a larger property with a pool roughly in the same area. Today, she's living the life she always dreamed of, surrounded by the people she loves, and doing her best to have a positive impact on the world. She hopes her story will serve as a cautionary tale for others in a similar situation. Wealth can be a double-edged sword. It can bring blessings, but it can also be a curse. The key is to approach it with humility, seek professional advice, and, most importantly, remain anonymous.